let me first introduce Lou Marquette from the Leyland Alliance. And Lou is part of the development team, and we'll talk about that group. And then we'll talk about what we heard last May when we started this process and how we're going to move ahead. So, Lou, do you want me to put this back in, or do you want to?
Thank you. Well, good evening. My name's Lou Marquette, and I just want to thank Scott for making sure he got a big enough room. It's a great crowd. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it very much. I'm a principal in Leyland Alliance. My partner Howard Kaufman's back there in the back, right, with Leyland Alliance. And he and I have been working together longer than the age of my children. It's been almost 30 years. Our partner Dan Zelson is here. Dan, where are you? You're over here on this side. Dan's also here from Charter Realty. Our partner Jeff Prosecco, who's been here for quite a few years building the Maplewood project, got delayed and could not be here today, but he'll be here tomorrow morning. And he'll be here for the rest of the week, I think. And then we have Jeremy Thomas is in the back next to Howard from Cornell, representing Cornell this evening in the back. And we're just really excited to be able to get started. You know, we were here a year ago, we heard from you, and we've been working at this project since then, pulling the pieces together. We're just really ready to get on with the next phase of the project, which is really getting into the planning. And for that, we've assembled a very large team, and I just would like to have Paul Ostergaard from Urban Design Associates introduce that team and the rest of the process. He's going to work with Scott and the rest of us, but we worked with Paul Ostergaard for many years, and we did a project called Storrs Center in Storrs, Connecticut, at the University of Connecticut, which Paul worked on us with for many years, and also we worked with him in Virginia and some of the other projects that we have in Connecticut. So Paul, if you would, thank you.
Thank you, Lou. Thank you all very much for coming out this evening. This is a fabulous turnout. We do many planning charrettes around the country, and this is one of the most vibrant communities, I think, in terms of public participation. So congratulations to you all. This is really terrific, because the more that you participate, the better the results. I think that's what we've discovered in our years of practice. We have a team from UDA of a total of 5 people. We have David in the back and Kara, and Ashley and Terry are right over there. And then Widom Design is here too in force. Please raise hands of all the Widom people too. This is not the whole team. Tomorrow we're going to have representation from 3 firms that are going to actually design the buildings, the architects. And they've recently come on the team. And we're very excited that they're coming on at this stage in the process, because they're going to help us think about this, the opportunities on this site. And together as a large team, we're going to work through the week here in this space to develop design ideas. You'll have an opportunity to come in on Wednesday evening. There will be no formal presentation, but you'll be able to walk around and talk to any design team member you wish to talk to, look at the models, look at the progress, the drawings that we're doing. We would very much value your input at that Wednesday evening event. And then Thursday evening, we will present design ideas for East Hill. We won't have a plan, we'll have a number of design ideas, and we'll want you to talk about those with us as well in a similar sort of roundtable discussion format. So let's talk about our meeting now a year ago in May, where we had a great turnout over in the office the Cornell office building on the site. This is a view from the 2nd floor of the atrium looking down at the public meeting, and I'm guessing that many of you were able to attend that meeting. It was very important for us because we asked you some questions about the site and wanted to learn as much as we could about your impressions of East Hill Village, what you see as the strengths, what you like about East Hill Village, those things that are important that we want to protect and preserve. Then also the weaknesses with East Hill Village. What are some of the problems that you experience every day that we could begin to address in this planning effort? And then your ideas for the future. And so these were the three basic questions that structured our discussions. We had 140 people. It was a terrific turnout, and during that trip, we actually were able to tour the site on bicycle, which was a real treat. We got bicycles ordered up and spun around and photo documented the site, and so that was a really terrific experience. And we did some exercises in this meeting, what we call dot exercises, what we like to call dotmocracy, because it's a way in which you can communicate to us with great precision some of the aspects of the site that you want to talk about. So for instance, we gave people green dots to show us where the best places were on the site. We gave people red dots to show us where the worst places were on the site. And then we gave people blue dots to help direct us to show where they think there's opportunity for improvement. And then we combine the dots in various ways, and they give us various clues as to how we should proceed. So let's first talk about the strengths of the site. So what we did was we were in an organized like this with tables and maps on the tables, and everybody got 3 green dots, and we asked everybody to put the dots on the map. And this is a compilation of all of the green dots that were put down on maps in that meeting. So this is everybody's opinion. And you can see how the community thinks about East Hill right now. There's great love, I think, for the grocery store. There's people like the Best Western Motel. They like the drugstore, some of the other commercial offerings on the site, some of the housing surrounding it. They also like the open space and the fields. Perhaps dots were put there because people see opportunity there. So let's talk a little bit about the strengths. And this is just a brief summary of some of those strengths. People like the existing businesses and restaurants at East Hill Plaza and the value of the community services, especially the grocery store, College Town Bagels, and some of the other retailers. The location and the parking is very convenient for people who use East Hill Plaza, shops and services. There's a great public transportation there, and it's near regional trails, and and there's a potential for new connections to the East Hill Recreation Way. So it is pretty well connected, but not maybe to the extent that we all think it should be, but there's a good start there. There's an interesting rural character to the site, which is very different from other aspects of Ithaca, with the surrounding fields and the horses and other agricultural related buildings and just the general environment. And also Cascadilla Creek is considered to be a very beautiful corridor. And then, of course, the Agava restaurant is also very much admired. It's a historic depot building. So what were some of here's some of the photographs of some of what people liked about the site. The rural landscape, the agricultural character, the plentiful free parking that's available, and the trail along the Cascadilla Creek. So what were the problem areas? Oh, this is interesting. Red dots on some of the uses, the Cornell offices in the center, the Burger King, who got really hit bad. The Sizer building got hit some, and then dots, I think, on streets and intersections, indicating that there's some problems with traffic management, with pedestrian safety. A few more dots on the motel. So that's sort of a balance there of green and red. So let's look at what the people mentioned as weaknesses. This environment is very car-oriented. The sidewalk connectivity is really not good here at all. There's a sidewalk on the plaza side of Pine Tree Road, but not on the other side. There are really not very good crosswalks across Pine Tree Road. So there are a lot of challenges for pedestrians there. And also the traffic tends to speed along, so people don't really feel safe as pedestrians. Now, remember, this is what you're telling us, so I'm repeating back to you what we've heard. And for us, this was really good insight. There's also the landscaping on the streets is very limited as well, and in the parking areas. The site as a whole feels isolated from the surrounding Ithaca community. And some of the stores and offices within East Hill Plaza feel a bit isolated from one another. And a lot of this has to do with the public realm, or lack of it. The lack of open space or green space on site, and it's pretty remarkable if you look at that model over there, how few trees there are on the site. Parking is the dominant site element in East Hill Plaza. There's limited access and high demand for affordable or moderate income housing in Ithaca. So this is an issue that is related to this development opportunity, certainly. There are stormwater issues, including flooding on the eastern edge of the site due to poor site drainage around the Ellis Hollow apartments and those areas. A lot of people talked about that. So that is an issue that must be dealt with. And then the style and character of the buildings is a bit primitive and commercial in nature. So that it's not presenting an attractive gateway to the Cornell University campus for people coming from New York as they drive into into Ithaca. So it's just not a very good image. And also the center splits the site in half. So you have the site that's north of the center and the area of the site that's south of the center, and that's a bit of a challenge for us. And then here are the opportunities that people mentioned for this site. The project should shift the auto-oriented shopping plaza toward a more pedestrian-oriented neighborhood center with improved transit connections. The dots? Yeah, let's talk about the dots first. Let's do the blue. Do you have the blue dots? Yeah. So basically people, with a blue dot distribution here, people were saying, you pretty much should have free reign to look at this entire site. Sometimes blue dots are more concentrated in certain areas, but I think people saw opportunity just about everywhere. Along the intersection of Ellis Hollow Road and Pine Tree Road, back in the fields in the back, where the farmer's market is, that area now behind the drugstore and so on. So this sort of helps direct us in terms of where we should concentrate our energies. And when you combine that with the red dots, you see that we have a lot of issues to deal with across the entire study area. Okay, so let's talk about the visions. Again, this should shift to a more pedestrian-friendly environment that's walkable. To integrate the East Hill Village project buildings and programming both within the site and within the rest of the community. To retain the elements of the site that are valued, including the grocery store, the farmer's market, and convenient access for shopping. Create new public spaces on the site. There really aren't any right now, and we see great opportunity there. Maybe perhaps a variety of public spaces. Mixed-use development could offer an enhanced array of community services, restaurant options, and retail options to serve visitors and residents. The proposal could also bring additional office or professional services to the site. You mentioned that there are opportunities for sustainable technology, renewable energy, and green infrastructure to be used as key components of the project's overall design. and that the housing options at East Hill Village could include affordable and moderate income options for a demographic that targets Cornell graduate and professional students, faculty and staff, and their families. And that there are opportunities for the scale of the proposed buildings to be designed in a thoughtful way that sits well in their surrounding context. And people use the word village a lot in describing the character of this development, which might also describe the scale of buildings and the sort of nature and character of the public spaces. So this is a summary of what you described to us in May of last year.
Thanks, Paul. So we were able to distill a lot of what we heard back in May into some design and planning principles. And the idea, the goal being to transform this existing, we all know East Hill Plaza, right? It's car-oriented. It's not, there aren't many people out there who are saying we really should preserve the existing character and quality of that particular landscape. So the idea is to make it more human-friendly, make it more of a neighborhood, and have an increased variety of retail and residential and professional experiences. What's there right now is great, actually. The supermarket, the restaurants, the services, more of it with the addition of more residential, more density, more architecture, can actually be a really splendid place. So some of the action items we put together, I'm at that age where I have to do this to see you. I'm just going to do this and I can squint. One is stick to the vision, so achieve this density that's consistent with the master plans that we all know from the area, the town's plan, the comprehensive plan, Cornell's plans as well, and the rezoning initiatives that are ongoing right now, as I'm sure you're all aware of, with form-based code and the idea of these mixed-use nodes and focal points. Establish the site as a gateway development. It's right on the edge of the Cornell campus. It's right near the division between the city and the town, between landscape types of rural and suburban and moving into urban. So it's at a very interesting place in our county. The idea that the architecture should be of a really high quality. I think there's great room for improvement in some of the architecture that is there. It should connect with the historic nature of the architecture in Ithaca, and the sustainability that's available to us now in building techniques and materials. We also want to make sure that in moving around the site and its arrangement, that the transportation is thought of in every sort of way, and that pedestrians and bicycles should be a big part of that planning, and obviously not just the movement of vehicles through the space. There's great opportunity for really re-envisioning how stormwater management might happen in that site, of using more green spaces as part of a design infrastructure, and really making a walkable neighborhood with pleasant streets and small blocks and interesting public spaces. There's no real center, as Paul said, of the space, and to think of what that might mean for East Hill Plaza, where that might be and how that might be organized and how that might be designed. Those spaces, those public open spaces, can become organizers of the whole site and help create that neighborhood we're all looking for. It could be an active and flexible central square surrounded by shops and restaurants that become a heart of this new village, this new community. The building should be positioned to create streets and squares with sunlight and air. We're talking a lot about that right now, and they should range in height. We've talked, as we know right now, everything's 1 story. So between 1 story and 4 and 5, perhaps, in looking at this site. The idea that this project is really for all of Ithaca and that it shouldn't be a sort of a monoculture development, that it should be a neighborhood with housing types for a broad market appeal, workforce and graduate and professional students, as well as academic faculty and staff, families, seniors, that really in creating a place we need to think across a broad spectrum of diversity. And also diversity in the retail and other businesses to create an attractive destination for the residents there and for people who are coming to the site. To continue to offer neighborhood-oriented retail and services, to create seasonal points of interest, including garden markets. There's a wonderful farmers market there on Wednesdays now, and active programming. Prioritize connectivity. So we're really near some wonderful trails, the East Hill Recreation Trail and other areas, to make sure that connection's made from the plaza itself to those areas. Improve the existing streets and new streets, in fact, within the development of the site. The integrity and performance of Pine Tree and Mitchell and Ellis Hollow are clearly important. Making strategic connections to existing utility infrastructure that serves the site and surrounding community. We're spending a lot of time looking at that infrastructure right now of water and sewer and other utilities. Connect the indoor and outdoor environments, both in terms of their use and their layout. Both exterior and internal spaces, and making sure that the whole site is thought of in that design. And being meaningfully green in our thinking, in our planning, in our development of how the site plan works, in the buildings themselves, some performance measures to set a minimum thresholds and design criteria for energy consumption in building systems, creatively reusing what existing buildings are there where appropriate. There's, as I mentioned, green infrastructure. That this is a wonderful site for using green infrastructure that we really don't see enough of in our planning to respond to existing hydrological patterns and resolve existing problems with flooding and stormwater. So those are some of the principles that came from what we heard last May and that our team has been talking about. And Paul, if you want to come back up and talk about the next steps in this whole process.
So to recap the week, we're starting off the week with this meeting. We arrived today. We've set up the studio. We've set up the model. And that model is of existing conditions. And that's going to be, we're going to play with blocks this week. We're really excited about that. So we're going to be testing plan ideas and massing them up with blocks to see how we might imagine a future East Hill village. It's going to be a lot of fun. As I mentioned, we have architects joining us tomorrow. Studio Ma out of Albuquerque, Perkins Eastman out of New York, and Newman Architects out of Connecticut. They're all three outstanding firms. We've had the pleasure of working with two of the three firms in the past on projects, and we certainly are looking forward to working with Studio Ma, who we've not had the pleasure to work with. They are very excited to be engaged in this process. So we're going to put all our heads together. We're going to do a lot of drawing. A lot of ideas are going to flow. We'll have the development team here to keep us tamped down and rational and not overly enthusiastic about crazy ideas. They're going to make sure that we come up with a design that is feasible, exciting, and really, and the best projects are the ones that have both of those qualities. They're feasible, they can be built. They're also very exciting and great contributions to Ithaca and to Cornell. Wednesday, you're welcome to come back here at 6 o'clock. We'll have this open house, as I mentioned before. It's an open house, so you can come and go. There will be no formal presentation, but you'll have an opportunity to peek over people's shoulders, look at drawings, talk to the design team. We'll have drawings pinned up on the wall, so we'll make it as easy for people to see what we're doing as we possibly can. Thursday, we're really crunching. We're going to have a closed studio. We don't want to meet with anybody on Thursday because we have to prepare for the digital presentation that starts at 6 o'clock. And we'll have in that presentation plans, perspective drawings, a bunch of ideas. We will have built a massing model that we're kind of excited about, hopefully. We may have some alternatives that we can slip in there. And you'll have an opportunity to talk to us about these design ideas. What do you like? What don't you like? Have we forgotten something? We want to hear from you as much as we can. And then Friday we'll have an internal team wrap up here in the morning, and then we'll head home. So it'll be a very busy week. We're delighted that you're helping to kick this week off. And so what we would like to do now is give you a little bit of an assignment. You have on the table the draft design principles that Scott just presented to you. We just would like you to review those design principles. Tell us what you think. Do you like them? Are there things we're missing? New ideas that you would like to introduce? Because we're going to go through all of your comments tomorrow morning as the design team assembles and we begin the process of developing ideas. So we want the benefit of your thoughts based on this set of criteria, the design principles. We evaluate our designs against these principles. Has what we've drawn satisfied the principles that are listed there, or not?
All right, so our group did a lot of thinking through these principles. We thought that a lot was covered, but things we wanted to pull out is really important. We're maintaining in the architecture a human scale and focusing heavily on the historic context of Ithaca. We want to make sure that when we're bringing in bicycle lanes, that when we have streets that aren't really safe and appropriate for bicycles, that we get protected, separated infrastructure. If needed, speed limit reductions. We really like the group focusing on turning the kind of highway context into a slower urban street where people can be comfortable walking and being in a place that you don't really want to stand right now. In the public realm and open space, the group was really interested in having a playground as well as having some kind of naturalistic elements that are interesting to be in, interesting for kids to play in. We'd like to see utilities buried on the site to really keep the streets and the public spaces beautiful and useful as much as possible. We talked a lot about wanting housing on the site and needing housing for the broad variety of different housing types and people. We'd really like to see affordability specifically called out as an attribute of this housing. We want different types of housing, but also housing for people at different economic incomes, opportunities, particularly for staff and families who live here, things that are missing in our housing market. We discussed, with the mix of retail and restaurants, one of the things people really liked was having places that people from the university and people from the community can meet. So that was mentioned as being something that's great about Agava, and that we'd like to see focused on more and played up, as this is a kind of connection between the university and the greater Ithaca community. We discussed the parking. One comment was that mixed use and walkability is the priority, but it'd be really nice to also have some parking, and maybe if it was free, people would like that. We discussed the possibility of a park and ride lot as something that might fit somewhere on the site. Maybe not depending on the uses, but that's something that could be useful if people could come to the site, park, take a bus to Cornell, work, come back, do some shopping, hang out before they head home. In connectivity, we thought that traffic calming was really important on those existing major streets that they're really unsafe and unfriendly now. We talked about using green traffic calming measures, having street trees, having tree lawns, things that really humanize the space and bring more green into this area as we're urbanizing it. We wanted to know if there's a traffic engineer on the team because the streets are one of the most important parts. And we discussed a desire for having electric car charging stations integrated with residential parking. And we just had a little tip that the dumpster at the grocery store brings flies to Agava. If you'd like that to be sorted out differently.
They don't compliment the guacamole.
I think, anything else? Thanks.
We were focused a little bit more on the details. We were wondering with respect to housing, just what we have in mind with housing, if they're going to be separate units, if they're going to be attached units, if they're going to be apartments, if we're looking at mixed kind of housing in those senses. A big focus for us was traffic, whether there's been any traffic impact studies of this development. We're concerned about the impact on existing neighborhoods, Bell Sherman, Ellis Hollow, Forest Home. We were wondering whether, we're not clear on what the boundary of the project is and whether it includes, for example, the intersection at Maple Avenue and Pine Tree Road, which is a very dangerous intersection, and particularly for cyclists and pedestrians. So our concern is that there be an attempt to minimize traffic impacts on existing neighborhoods. We'd like to see some bike and car share options. And we'd like to know if there's going to be some rerouting of traffic external to this development, because right now Pine Tree Road goes right through the middle of what is presumably the project, and either there have to be some really severe traffic calming measures, or that will have to be rerouted as sort of a peripheral road. So in addition to housing and the traffic impacts and the connectivity, we had a few additional interesting things, like what are we thinking in terms of lighting and light pollution? How are you going to heat and cool the project there? Is it, going to be geothermal? How are we going to be sustainable in terms of the energy use within the project? And then we were thinking of fire protection. Has there been given thought to this is going to be a fairly large development, and right now the only fire protection there, we think is from College Town, and that may be a little bit iffy. We also thought about the public space. I think that's really an important part of this project. I think someone over here mentioned playground. We had thought of a performance space. There is no meeting space in that area. I mean, you had to come down here in order to accommodate a group like this. A daycare center would be very welcome there. And maybe the town of Ithaca would like to think of some kind of a peripheral office space there. So I would welcome any other additions that I have, things that I've missed here. Have I missed anything that is critical? Someone wanted a pony too. Horse stable.
Well, I mostly listened to some concerns about aesthetics, but I'll be talking on behalf of these very humble people. I think some of it is summed up well in the sticky note that says, does it have to be as ugly and congested as Maplewood? And so I think there was a very big concern that 5 stories is too high for the area and will stick out a lot and ruin some of the character. As well as concern about losing parking or parking not being free. and making sure that if it's going to be transit oriented, that there's actually adequate bus service, meaning adding more buses and even helping TCAT get more funding in order to accommodate that. Also, there was concern that adding more population in this area would overburden schools, and also that it would overburden childcare. And so looking both at potentially as a childcare center, but also making sure that units are capable of accommodating at-home childcare. Also looking at the actual need for affordable housing for a variety of people, and making sure affordable is actually affordable, not just over the threshold, but compared to the entire area. Really making sure that the grocery store is not lost at any point during the development process. Energy and sustainability and creative use of stormwater. I think that is most of it. And also really making sure that all of the comments that are brought today are really incorporated and showing that,
Ourselves with all the good things that the prior tables already said. We would add post office, more varied detail, again, the grocery store, covered space for the farmer's market, community meeting space, and entertainment space. It would really be nice to have, a meeting room or a couple of meeting rooms. A lot of concerns about safety, for example, street lighting on the streets leading up to the neighborhoods, up to the area. We thought there could be a bridge over Pine Tree Road, pedestrian bridge from those upper stories maybe. Traffic calming measures, we also talked about a quick transit loop to downtown, like the number 10 bus that goes up and down. It's reliable enough that people really know that they can use it. And then bike storage, like next to the bus stop, so people can take their bike to there and then ride the bus downtown and ride back up the hill. Affordable housing, really mixed incomes, and owner-occupied housing as well. Did I miss anything here? Some people worried about the impact on schools and nearby neighborhoods. And making sure that the developers get the input from the county, the town of Ithaca, town of Dryden, and the city of Ithaca to really make sure it integrates with things that are already going on. So I think that's it. Did I miss anything? Okay. Traffic. That sort of concerns about traffic to and from the neighborhood, and so through the existing neighborhoods.
Of connectivity, and I think there was a lot of consensus that we really want this project to be something that is integrated into the surrounding neighborhood and the greater Ithaca community. So there's a lot of ways to accomplish that through design and retention. At the same time, we don't want any of the negative externalities that come with development. So you got to do something about traffic and school kids and all that stuff. That's the design challenge. I think there was a clear consensus that more density at this site is highly desirable, and particularly in the realm of providing housing. And the housing that needs to be built here is housing that serves a lot of different needs and a lot of different incomes. So we're greatly in favor of affordable housing and workforce housing, which I think is one of the intentions here. We also discussed how this will be built and how and if it will actually be a green project. And there was a lot of support at our table for using green building techniques to the maximum extent that we can and making it a showcase project in that respect. We wanted to pay property taxes, and we were assured that it will. There's a sense among our group that many of the things that are important in Ithaca need to be recreated in this project. And we had somewhat of a discussion in which some skepticism about some of the directions that you may be heading are the correct ones. For example, I don't think anybody expressed any great love for the design of most of the existing buildings in this area. So I think we were generally in favor of, let's start over with some really nice architecture. When people can see if I've missed anything. Yes, universal design in the housing is very important. We talked a bit about who this housing would serve, and we recognize that there's a lot of different submarkets. One of the submarkets that's not talked about very often are people who are aging and what the needs of aging people are in housing. So we'd like that to at least be considered in the realm of new housing that's being built here. Thank you.
I'm Carol Schock, and I'm here with talking with my Bryant Park Civic Association hat on here. The Civic Association, your gentleman glasses. There was a very long and productive discussion on the Bryant Park Civic Association list. How many people live here, are here from that neighborhood, whether you're on the list or not? Okay. I know there's more at the state. Okay. So what I tried to do before I came here was, and my commitment to the list was that I would try to summarize the comments that everybody in the listserv made, because there were multiple people who made the same ones. And I'll just say that I'm impressed that you have gotten, actually, you heard last year a bunch of stuff that we had submitted then, so I will try not to repeat those. The absolute top mentioned requested amenities by many people had to do with grocery stores, but I'll emphasize at various price points and including organic. A lot of people wanted basic, but people also want the opportunity for organic. You mentioned farmers market. You also mentioned maybe a Green Star branch, maybe a small-scale Wegmans branch, but groceries, basic and organic. And whether in one store or separate stores. You heard housing as a top mentioned factor and the price point. Some people wanted to know, not necessarily owner-occupied possibility, because we understand the site is owned by Cornell, but the kind of arrangements that Cornell has on some other site where you live in it for a long time and are basically responsible for it. Condos, let's see, green energy came up there. And not just, I also have an energy hat, as do some other people in this room, but people from the neighborhood I've never heard talk about energy wanted to know your comment tonight about it green had to do with hydrology, but specifically energy related. Would it be truly green, wind, water, air, solar, earth-based, and definitely not gas. The traffic was a great concern, and not just as related to traffic, we realize that there's an inherent conflict from this project between the Pine Tree Road neighborhood, which also has, I believe, an association or a listserv, and the Bryant Park Civic Association, that includes Bell Sherman. You send traffic one place, you comment one place, it goes somewhere else. So how do you handle that? We all care about our neighborhoods. That part was my comment. And then pedestrian safety, that's been mentioned closer to the site, but a lot of people pointed out the concern about the safety of children walking to the school. Both the children who already are walking to the school, who will have more traffic, and also assuming that there might be, that the children who live in this new project will also maybe want to be walking to Bell Sherman School. And if they do, how do you make that safe for them, and how do you make the pedestrian crossings, not just close to the project, but all the way down Mitchell Street in particular, safer. although I was writing just now, was Agava. Not only keeping Agava, but recognizing its historic building, former train station, and preserving that. Low-key wine, very low-key wine, and very low-key maybe other bars, in addition to restaurants were mentioned by a couple of people. Meeting space, not just meeting space that some can sign up for, but meeting space that would be open to community groups to sign up for, either in connection with a library branch or on its own. Green space and recreation, both indoors and outdoors. And I'm going to hand in this list, but not tonight, or maybe tonight, but there'll be another version after people from coming out of tonight give comments on the listserv. Indoor recreation, sort of studio fitness kind of opportunities. Community garden space was mentioned on the listserv. Hardware store. It was surprising to me how many people, maybe it's just because I've been so busy the last 10 years, but surprising to me how many people mentioned hardware stores. I had time to go there. Copy shop, postal store, very important to a lot of people, but please talk to Uncle Marty first. At the Marty, who owns the college down the store, people really like his service and don't want his undermined. Child care, car charging, other mentioned amenities, not quite as often as the others were. Child care, car charging stations, lab services, even if there are other medical services, ambulance station, and I think I've got it. Thank you very much.
But I'm going to invite my colleagues to add anything that I miss. Otherwise, I know you'll be disappointed because I'll only go about 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, here we go. No expansion of fossil fuel use. No net increase in fossil fuel use. Maximize the use of renewable energy. Because buildings are going to last 30 to 50 years, they need to meet the efficiency standards that are being set by the city and the town for 2030 through 2050, not the standards that are going to be set for the immediate construction. Connectivity should emphasize a Jitney TCAT network that results in very frequent pickups from the central area, from the East Hill Village. We're not convinced that bicycles have any real significant place because the surrounding area is difficult to ride in bikes safely. Cornell campus is hilly. The area below is hilly. And we don't want to run into each other. Another item on connectivity is that through traffic from the south and east, Caroline, Ellis Hollow, over toward Route 79 needs to be respected. You just can't throw them in there and have them wend their way through some kind of new urban maze. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, right. One of the things that sort of came up peripherally in everything we were saying, and people have made this point at different tables about transportation, but one of the points that wasn't made relative to it is there's all kinds of discussions about transportation going on in the county. There's at least 3 different county committees that are working on it. And then at Cornell, there's transportation study being initiated. There's a whole transportation department, dealing with planning and transportation. It would seem to me like connectivity at the initial stages means connecting and getting a comprehensive plan for the area. Now, I know that that's not in the charge of particular development, but I would think that it's wise if any of these goals are going to be realized. That is, the quality of life, all of Ithaca, the vision, any of these things, that you want to coordinate it with an overall vision of planning. And I know there are representatives from different places, different committees and so forth that are maybe talking with this, but it seems to me, at least in the area of transportation where this all started, there could be a real effort to make this a kind of stimulus to thinking comprehensively about the needs for a robust transportation system, linking east to center, east to Cornell, and east to west, east to north.
Be very different than what Cornell might be most interested in. We feel that 3 to 4 stories are just out of scale. That it would remind us of the old church that's in downtown New York City, and up around it is just surrounded by high-rises, and we're very concerned about that. We lived there at the East Hill Plaza area. We do not want the Maplewood type of abrupt development that, even though it's not finished, we're seeing that, and it's just very abrupt. Let's see. We feel that in the proposed project that urban idea is being dropped in the center of a rural area. We're concerned about the contrast that we might see, again referring to Maplewood. Right now we feel the East Hill Plaza area is functional. It might not be pretty, but it does function, and it provides us seniors with a lot of services. We don't want the urbanization of downtown Ithaca to come to the East Hill area. We want to preserve the privacy and the quaintness of the trails and the canopy of trees along the trails. We're concerned about that bus flow will be included in the plan, even possibly including bus-only roads. It seems that the current design of the intersections and pathways for the buses don't really give them enough turning radius. Even over at the East Hill office building that we're now put up. We're very concerned about the snow removal, and including the sidewalks. It seems like the sidewalks in the area get the last treatment of snow removal. That first it's the roads and then the parking lots. And if this is going to be a big area where walking is important, we want snow removal considered. We feel that Maplewood, as an example, that the housing and the buildings are too close to the road. There's not a lot of green space there for the sidewalks. Let's see. We're concerned about noise and light pollution in the area. We're worried about businesses during this construction. That if we look back on when the Commons was built and then redone back around 2015, businesses in that area really suffered. We're concerned that this development might, with the tenants coming on, it would overwhelm the existing services, not only for the businesses, but utilities. We find examples of some nice white open spaces. If you look on Cornell campus, there's the art squad, which is nice. The engineering quad didn't go over so well. They took a lot of nice green space out and packed a lot of things in there. If you look around the area around the slopes around the Johnson Art Museum, back behind Uris Library, that's open, very inviting, and a beautiful spot. So density has its drawbacks. Let's see. We'd like to see benches and fountains along the walkways. We'd like to see moderate cost restaurants. We'd like to keep the car wash, have possibly a dollar store or a reuse center. We'd like to keep the laundry and dry cleaning. Thank you.
Those that have been discussed, and I'm standing in a really bad we were concerned a bit about who is going to be responsible for the building of things like sidewalks and bicycle lanes in some of the more peripheral to the immediate East Hill Plaza area. For example, the area between Route 79 and East Hill Plaza, there's a very large section there that has no sidewalks. Clearly, you're going to slow the traffic down in there, but there's no room for sidewalks because you're talking about people's front lawns. So how is that going to be addressed? And we were concerned also about parking and making sure that while we want open space, we need a place for the cars that are going to come. That brought up by the fact that many people come through Pine Tree Road into that area to Cornell or even down into Ithaca from Brooktondale, from Slaterville Springs, from beyond. And we want them to be able to stop and enjoy the things that will be there, the retail spaces, the restaurants, whatever. But we need to know what they want from it as well. So we're talking about integrating with all of Ithaca. Maybe we should have a little bit of conversation beyond that as well. And the parking, of course, for them, the parking ride sounded like a great idea for people coming from those areas. And finally, one thing that I don't think has come up, because one of us here is directly involved with a large green space that abuts a portion of the East Ithaca Recreation Walkway, which goes up to Snyder Hill Road. There's a Forever Wild area there that has been maintained by the town of Ithaca for walking purposes, and interestingly enough, they were approached by Best Western for looking for places for their people to go for a walk. You've come to stay at the Best Western, you've had a long day, you might want to take a nice walk. How do you get to those places? Yes, the rest of the trail is there, but there's far more than just the short trail areas right within the Best Western area. And I think that's it, unless you can think of, thank you.
Serves wide-reaching context, including the nearby Cornell facilities beyond the campus, the rural patrons from the southeast corner of the county, including Dryden, Caroline, and Burtondale, as well as the town of Ithaca and how it fits into the town's plans. Second, transportation should generate complete streets with clarity and predictability for all experiences of using the street, whether that's walking, cycling, or driving. Roundabouts are great, and at least 3 of us on the table really enjoy bicycling around that area. Third point, the architecture should be an interesting and attractive destination for locals and visitors alike. A mixture of building types and materials is key for meeting different housing needs, including for potential families and demographics that aren't necessarily represented in this room. Although some members of the table expressed hesitation for mid-rise buildings in that context, others also pointed to the surprising density that already exists in a lot of upstate villages around the area with 3 to 5 story buildings historically. Fourth, the provision of energy should fit with the community sustainability goals, including with heating and being conscious about whether or not to use gas. Anybody want to add or clarify?
No, but we didn't want gas.
Oh, yeah, so you didn't want gas.
Okay, so we were asked actually to comment on we were asked to comment on the planning and design principles, but one of the things that was actually missing was some summary of that master plan of Cornell University that would have helped us to sort of understand better what the design principles were supposed to achieve. The other thing is any market studies that are going to be used as an input to this planning, obviously very important. And it looks like that with the previous planning of East Hill, actually the existing facilities there, the marketing wasn't really done very well because it's basically not meeting the needs and potential shopping space is used by Cornell as offices, and it's a bare place. It's terrible. But, so hopefully that this time is going to be done better. But none of that information is available here to us, so it was a little bit difficult from that perspective. All right. The other thing that we think is important is that there is an Alice Holler community and there's an Alice Holler Community Center, and I think it's really important that there's going to be communication with that center. They're also talking about putting up a new building, and they're looking at this plan as being something that is going on in parallel. And I think that should really be integrated. And we did communicate the name of the chair there to the person that was helping us here. now I have to just start reading. Yeah, what really was emphasized is to have a very functional access and not just check the box, okay, there needs to be a path from, for instance, the community there, the elderly community to East Hill, that's going to be integrated with that center, with the new planning. It's very important. And we're not going to skip any items that came up because of redundancy, because I think it does reflect what the interest is of our table. So traffic came up multiple times. It's very important that that's looked at very carefully. Pine Tree Road, connected to 79, is very crucial. If you're going to make that a very urbanized road, then that's really going to be a problem, for instance, for El Sol Road. That's going to be much more used. Mitchell is going through the school area, which is very problematic, and the access to Maple Road is very problematic. So I think it's really important that whole logistics of the traffic is going to be looked at very carefully. Another important point was that this center, although it should be for all of Ithaca, is that it's not going to drive any businesses crazy that are currently downtown. I mean, downtown already has its own problems. Creating another Ithaca center with restaurants and everything here, that's very nice and very close to university. Currently, a lot of the university needs are being met by downtown, and that's good, because then it is a lively area, so this should not be in competition, it should be sort of in addition to, which is very important, I think, for both. Space to sit outside, very important. It's not really there downtown. Maybe this can be a nice thing to be added to. And then I'm thinking about, for instance, you can eat outside. Agave has got this little area that's surrounded by artificial green that sort of gives you the feeling of being outside. But you want to be able to sit outside, have a beer, and look at the people that are walking down there. So all these people are looking at the people that are sitting there. So that's sort of the environment that you find in European cities often, and that would be very nice to have that here. Next one. Yeah, important thing, I think it's not mentioned yet, is to create space for medical professional offices. Everyone needs to go either to the other side of the lake or to north side of Ithaca. So that would be a good addition to this area here. So that can be taken into account. Senior subsidized housing integrated into the site, so that we already mentioned that needs to be really connected. And then we talked about the connectivity to the trail along Cascadilla Creek, so that should be a nice connection so that people can use that recreative space there. There's a suggestion for using native plants for that, for the green aspect of this. Also, alternative energy came up. Bikes is important. Just keep on going. Link to Dryden. I think it was mentioned once, but I think it's important to take that into account, what's happening in Dryden. Green Space Node, the recreation trail there, that's going to be integrated really nicely. And then there may be some leftovers and remnants of some historic buildings and sites, and if there's anything there, please integrate that and don't use the bulldozer to take it away, but be cognizant of that. There is a nice history there. The other thing is, that's about the hydrology, I think, is using semi-permeable paving. There's a lot of problems with groundwater coming up, so okay, that's it.
Our group hoped that the project would not be too Cornell-centric, but would also include mixed income, seniors, families, etc. There was concern about transportation, connectivity, also the impacts of traffic on the surrounding neighborhoods. Hope for a variety of heights, not all the same height of buildings. Priority for locally owned businesses rather than chain stores. If it becomes too upscale an area, that's how you make the noise. Will the rents get too high and force the local businesses out? Parking right now is yucky. It's a large, vast expanses of parking. Could it be underground? Could it somehow be more trees? More trees generally, especially native species. Concern that the development may be profit-driven rather than what serves the community best. Hope for a community center, maybe a church, daycare, playground, after-school programs, community gardens. One of our more astute members noted that the way College Town is developed, it's a sterile urban canyon, and that we hoped it would not look like that when it's done. Use of local contractors where possible. Right now it's a neighborhood community or neighborhood commercial center. If it becomes too regional, it will attract people from all over, and then that will increase traffic. So if we could somehow keep it neighborhood scale, that would help. A desire for the town to be fully involved in this process rather than be after the fact approval. And then I think there was a consensus in our group to cancel a comment previous table made that we should not worry about, not try to accommodate cyclists. Cycling is a worthwhile thing.
Yeah.
So,
I would agree with that.
That's it.
We had a few discussion points, mainly regarding end user, traffic, pedestrian space, aesthetics, and better integration of students and residents. Regarding end user, there's a question, especially regarding the term gateway. Is this to be a gateway to specifically Cornell, or as is going to function as a bridge between the city and the town of Ithaca? Additionally, is this going to be a space for transition, or will it form its own space similar to downtown Ithaca? Following up on this, there seems to be a dissonance right now between commuters and pedestrian and people who currently live there, to the point where if you don't live there, you don't know that people live there. Regarding the pedestrian space, we would like to see more pedestrian safe spaces with better lighting and line of sight. We would also like to see amenities such as park and ride for reducing traffic, and maybe even have spaces where cars are forbidden, or having spaces where there's a no on-site ownership of car policy. Regarding aesthetics, we would like to see a better blend of the north and the south side of East Hill. With the building right in the middle, it seems like it really chops the site up a bit. Lastly, we would like to see spaces that better blend the long-term residents and the students together to form a more cohesive community. And did I miss anything?
Okay, a couple things. The first was public space for sure. We had the idea of maybe like a village green, a park, integrating the farmers market. We really want to advocate for having a covered structure for the farmers market up there, and also enabling the farmers market vendors to go someplace during construction so that this project doesn't wipe them out. Height is okay with us and favorable as long as it's well planned. We are all about activated roofing at this table, and so we're not afraid of height. We just want it to be done mindfully. Active engagement with communities of color and seeing this community and project as an opportunity for real proactive anti-racism in our development plan. And specifically, we had a couple questions which we can just throw out there for who's the landlord, basically, like what's the mix of housing and commercial, and then how does that affect, as someone else said, like the taxes, but specifically with this value of inclusion. If we are to be reaching out to international students, for example, or families or communities that we wouldn't necessarily have engagement with without Cornell, if the landlord would be actively engaged in engaging with those communities, that would be ideal. The general themes: public space, mixed use, inclusion, creative roofing, activated roofing. Anything else?
talk about, I'm gonna start with the last point, be meaningfully green. We want to really emphasize that, maybe say be aggressively green, it says aggressive right below meaningfully. So some things that we wanted to see is thinking about green from the beginning to the end life cycle, using green building materials, striving for a project that will sequester carbon, that will be really energy efficient and meet the highest goals possible. Also on this line of thought, tall wood construction, something that I'm personally passionate about. Geothermal was mentioned as a heating thing, solar panels, no natural gas, and supporting green infrastructure and trying to support the permeable pavement idea, and rainwater, keeping the storm drains as low flow as possible coming off the site. Then moving on to the community, and this project is for all of Ithaca. We want to bring up again the local schools, the impact on roadways, the local schools, the elementary schools in that area are at capacity, and thinking about how this is going to impact that. I want to second worker housing and affordable housing. Also, is this on the tax rolls, and how will this support the community and pay for the services provided by the county and the town? We want to see, we like the post office, the daycare, the fitness center, retail, restaurants that serve the residents and others. And then moving on to number 3, quality public open space. We like the community garden, indoor public space idea as well, because we know I think it's really rainy and snowy for much of the year. Meeting center idea is also something that we like at this table. And then going up to pedestrians, number 2, and bicycles are as important as cars. We like that. We like the idea of having really nice bicycle parking that's ample and also effective, and not as a secondary thought. Sharing the bicycle infrastructure with the city of Ithaca and Cornell's bike share program, integrating bicycles that way, integrating TCAT, and thinking about car shares and having a spot for car shares on site. All right, that's it.
Thanks, everybody, for your wonderful comments. I think we've done the best we can to record them. We're going to keep all of your sticky notes and posters with the markings on them, and we'll document all of this work. Again, remember Wednesday at 6 p.m. open house. Please come back and meet with the designers, and you'll be able to see some initial design concepts and ideas that we've developed for the site. Thanks again for sticking with us this evening. It's been a long evening for you. We really appreciate your assistance. Thank you.